Hi, my name is Wieliczko. I'm a registered clinical counselor and I'm here today to talk about intuitive eating and how that can be a support for mental health and physical well-being.
So, as an idea, intuitive eating is actually not a very difficult concept. It's basically about learning to interpret the signals that our body uses to communicate when it's hungry and when it's full. It's also about learning to recognize when we're turning to food for emotional reasons instead of physical hunger. And lastly, it's about letting go of the idea that we need to control how we eat. So the thing is, we all start out as intuitive eaters. When we were little babies, we all knew how to do it. Actually, it was basically all we knew. We asked for food when we were hungry, and then we stopped eating when we were done. So then, as we grow up, we slowly start controlling our eating. And we start to get a bit of distance from those intuitive signals. Now, this can lead to a couple of different things. It can lead to having a poor diet, partly because we're not sensitive to our need for variety, and we also might not feel our need for things like vegetables and other nutritious foods. It can also lead to over and under eating, and because we're not so good at distinguishing real physical hunger signals from all kinds of other things that affect our eating, it can also open up the path to emotional eating. Now, the term intuitive eating itself was created in 1995 by two nutritionists in California called Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch. Now, they came up with this term and wrote a book about it, basically to help people get out of yo-yo dieting. But over the years, it evolved to become this useful tool for almost anyone who's looking for a long-term approach to eating, and also a tool that's often used as part of eating disorders treatment. Now, according to Tribole and Resch, there are 10 principles of intuitive eating. So the 10 principles of intuitive eating are: reject the diet mentality, honor your hunger, make peace with food, challenge the food police, respect your fullness, discover the satisfaction factor, honor your feelings without using food, respect your body, exercise, feel the difference, and honor your health, gentle nutrition. So if you look at the slide and the different principles, one thing you'll see is that nutrition is right at the end. So a lot of people wonder why that is. And the reason that they decided to put nutrition right at the end was that it's just so easy for that to become the main focus of eating. And this then takes the focus away from other parts of the idea of intuitive eating that are just as important. And if the content of what we eat becomes really important, then what we're looking at becomes just another diet. Now, if we then take a look at the other principles, we can see that they're focused on completely different things than what the content of our diet is. It focuses mostly on how we feel and what we think about food in different situations. It brings up satisfaction as an important factor, and that's something we often don't consider when we're working hard to eat, in quotation marks, healthy. It also focuses on honoring our feelings and giving them room, instead of trying to make them go away, for instance, by eating. And then it's also about learning not to force our bodies into these regimented ways of eating that just don't feel nice for us. And one thing that's been shown in research, and this has been shown over and over again, is that most diets simply do not work in the long run because they're just not nice to keep up. They're a huge effort and they can only be sustained for so long. Now, the thing with intuitive eating is that it takes advantage of an intricate system of signals and tools that we have in our bodies to naturally regulate our food intake. And it's not just about telling us when we're hungry and full, even though that's a really important part. It's also about reacting on other things, like when we're not eating enough. So when we're not eating enough, our bodies think we're at risk, and starts doing things to keep us safe. Now, some of the things or the ways that our body reacts if we don't eat enough is that it slows down our metabolism, it increases our appetite, and it increases our food-related thoughts. So all of these things happen when we're not eating enough. And then on the other hand, when we are eating enough, our bodies speed up again. And and both our appetite and our interest in food is decreased. So the key is to stay well fed so that your thoughts don't circle around food all the time. So I think it's important to be clear that the goal of intuitive eating is not weight loss, and it's also not a cure for depression or eating disorders or any other serious mental health issue. And I've tried to present it visually in this slide here. So the point is, it's not supposed to be the sole treatment, especially for serious mental health concerns, but several studies have shown that some of the common side effects of intuitive eating are improved mood, decreased symptoms of depression, a source of strength and direction in the struggle against eating disorders, and in many cases, gentle weight loss. And the thing is, these effects all seem to be long-term. And there are diets that have shown results with both depression and weight-related problems. But the problem with these structured diets is that the effects are almost never long-term. So, on the practical side, how can you start your own intuitive eating journey? So here's a couple of tips, and you'll notice they're both focused on awareness. The first one is, and you can try this wherever you are, be aware of what's going on with your body during the day. Notice little things like how long you're hungry before you sit down to eat. And would you describe yourself as a little hungry, or starving most times you get to a meal? Now, starting to get a feel for those hunger signals is absolutely key. So what often happens is that we only realize we're hungry when we're actually already starving. And this, in turn, leads us to overeat, or eat much faster than we otherwise would. And that, of course, isn't great for our digestion or for our metabolism. And becoming better at noticing these signals can take a while, so just be patient and curious, and continue to practice that awareness. Okay, so here's the second one. Eat slower than usual, without distractions, or with as few distractions as possible. And notice the tastes, the textures, and other parts of the eating experience while you eat. Now, do you like what you're eating? Have you chosen your food for other reasons? And can you recognize your first fullness signal? So this exercise is about learning to recognize good times for ending a meal. And often what we try to do is we try to control portion sizes. And then if for some reason that portion size doesn't fit our situation, we usually end up blaming our bodies or ourselves for not being content with what we were supposed to be content with. And often, we neither allow ourselves to eat more if we're still hungry, nor stop eating halfway through if we're feeling full. In intuitive eating, the point is to respect our bodies above and beyond any rules that might put quite random restrictions on our eating. Now, I've gathered up some common questions and comments that I get quite often when people are thinking about trying this out. So here's the first one. But isn't it unhealthy to eat and put almost any food in these brackets? The thing is, and I get this a lot about whether we're supposed to eat this and whether we're supposed to eat that. The bottom line is nothing is unhealthy when it isn't eaten all the time. So we have sweets, hamburgers, deep fried things. They all have their place. They're delicious, they're fun, they're enjoyable, and they're often connected to social situations. And social situations are also really important, especially for our mental health. And when you eat a varied and generally healthy diet, there's room for all kinds of fun food. And I think in the book, I think they call it play food. And I think that's a great word as well. If I give myself unconditional permission to eat, I'll never stop. Now, this is a challenge for many people before they start. And it's often the biggest leap of faith. We live in a society where we're taught not to trust our bodies. It's almost like our bodies need to be kept in place by rules and by self-discipline. Now, practicing unconditional permission to eat is a long, but it's a really exciting process. Because the thing is, when we start understanding and trusting our bodies, we can let go of some of those rules and some of those ideas about self-discipline being the main thing. And then we can let go of both restrictions and out-of-control binges. And the most important part is that we will let go of these because they don't feel good, not because they're not allowed. Okay, so next one. I've just never really enjoyed exercise. Now, exercise can be almost anything. And it can sometimes be helpful to think about it as activity instead of exercise. It can be things like gardening or stretching or playing with your kids. And of course, the king of all moderate exercise, walking. I think my bottom line in this one is you absolutely do not need to go to a boot camp to get the health benefits of exercise. And there is something out there for everyone. My medications influence my appetite. How can I trust my body? So this is a challenge for many people who are on medications. For instance, lots of antidepressants can cause either weight loss or weight gain, or it can play around with your appetite. Now, partly, this is a question of trying to find the best type of medication and the right dose so that you get as few side effects as possible. And it's not your fault if a certain type of medication doesn't work perfectly, so keep trying to find one that suits you with regards to all the things that you feel are important, including which side effects you're ready to accept when considering the positive effects that the medication has. But secondly, when it comes to intuitive eating, learning to be more in tune with your body is going to be helpful regardless of whether it immediately has some certain influence on your weight or not. Learning to build a trusting relationship with your body in whichever situation it's in it's an important aspect of this. And it can actually counteract some of the side effects of the medications as well. Okay, so this one I also get quite a lot. Can an intuitive eater follow a specific diet? And I think the answer to this is yes. But I usually don't recommend a very specific diet to start with. And that's just because, like I said in the beginning, if the focus becomes too strongly on the content of what we're eating, that might influence, for instance, practicing giving yourself unconditional permission to eat. But having said that, you can be an intuitive vegan, or you can eat paleo food intuitively, but it does probably mean that you won't be following that diet to perfection. Because perfection and intuitive eating just don't go that well together. When you're eating intuitively, you'll be having fun with your way of eating, and you won't feel restricted by it. And if something comes up that means you'll need to change that diet, you won't necessarily resist that very much. You'll change it without worrying too much about it. So what about emotional eating? An important part of intuitive eating is to recognize when we eat for emotional reasons and when we eat for physical reasons. And once we have a feel for that, we can work on finding other things to do that actually help us deal with the emotional challenge and not just numb it by eating. Now the thing here is that our emotional relationship with food is strong. Again, it goes back to when we were small, and most of our distress calls were met with food. And the food that we got calmed us down for two reasons. both because of the food, because food does have a calming effect, and because it was usually connected with physical closeness as well. So these two things, food and comfort, are intricately linked from the start. Now, we don't actually need to sever that connection. It can still be around, and it's still something that we can turn to. It's actually okay. Food is one coping strategy. It's just we need to learn to use it, to use lots of different coping strategies instead of just eating. Because once you have a number of different coping strategies, it doesn't matter if one day you just feel like, today I'm tired, you know it's going to make me feel better, I'm going to have some chocolate. And that is totally okay. So, I think to sum it up, I just want to say that I think that we've somehow ended up in a place where we're way too serious about what we eat, especially about the tiny details of it. Sometimes it can even get a little bit obsessive, even when the ultimate goal is great. It's all about health. But intuitive eating is just a more gentle approach, and it has lots of flexibility. And it can work out for almost any type of person, any choices regarding food. And anyone can be really good at it, because it's a process, and it's full of learning, and it doesn't have to be done perfectly to work. And naturally, there's a lot more to talk about when it comes to intuitive eating, but for an introduction, I think this is a good start. So here's just, I just put the main address for the intuitive eating homepage up here. Now, the book by Resch and Tribo is available at almost any bookstore. It's been updated quite recently. I think the latest edition is from 2012. And it's really easy to follow and has lots of step-by-step, just practical tips if you want to get started. So I really recommend that book as a starting point. But you'll also find lots of other resources online, and lots of stories about people's experiences of intuitive eating and how they've done it and what it's been like for them. So that's all for me today. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.